إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. We continue inshallah ta'ala with our reminders and our benefits in preparation for this great month that is approaching upon us. This month which is an opportunity to earn the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This month, whosoever passes through this month and they do not benefit from this opportunity, as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentioned that they are doomed, that they are destroyed, and they are perished if they were to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this month passes them after this month, and they have not been forgiven. They are among those who are the losers. As the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, من صام رمضان إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whosoever fasts the month of Ramadan out of iman and out of ihtisab, out of iman, faith and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and ihtisab, wanting the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then all of his sins will be forgiven. And as we know, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, an angel Jibreel alayhi salam, they made dua against the one who reaches the month of Ramadan and did not benefit from it. And we continue with some of the qualities of Iman in preparing our Iman for this month of Ramadan. And in our last khutbah, we mentioned some of the sceneries and the states of the Day of Judgment. That day when we will stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will call us to account for every single thing that we have done. That day when we will stand and the fire of hell will be between us and the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There will be no entering into the Jannah except to cross over the fire of hell. And many will be who will fall below into the fire of hell. And they are those who will cross in a very bad state, being injured by the hooks that is on the sirat over the fire of hell. And there are some who will pass over successfully. And on that day we will stand and we will face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He will ask us about every minute thing that we have done, good and bad in this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to call us to account. But there are going to be a special group of people, and that is our topic today, insha'Allah ta'ala. A special group of people who will come on the Day of Judgment. As the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentioned in a hadith, عُرِضَتْ عَلَيَّ الْأُمَمْ فجعل النبي والنبيان يمرون معهم الرهط والنبي ليس معه أحد حتى رفع لي سواد عظيم قلت ما هذا أمتي هذه قيل بل هذا أمة موسى بل هذا موسى وقومه قيل انظر إلى الأفق فإذا سواد يملأ الأفق ثم قيل لي انظر ها هنا وها هنا في آفاق السماء فإذا سواد قد ملأ الأفق قيل هذه أمتك ويدخل الجنة من هؤلاء 70,000 بغير حساب ثم دخل ولم يبين. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that he was shown the nations on the day of judgment, and he said that a prophet and two prophets, they may come with a group of people, and they may be prophets who will come and he will not have any followers. And then he said he saw a great nation, and he asked, whose nation is this? Is this his nation? And it was said to him, rather, this is the nation of Musa. And then it was said to him, look to the horizon, and he will see a nation filling the horizon. And he will look everywhere, and he will see this nation coming and crowding the horizons. And it will be said that this is your nation, the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then it was said to him that from among these individuals, this great number of people, there are going to be 70,000 who will enter the Jannah without any hisab. They will enter the Jannah without being reckoned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will enter the Jannah without being called to account for anything in this dunya. And they will not be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he left, and he did not say who are these people. And the companions, they started to discuss, who are these individuals? Are they the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Are they the children, those who are born in Islam and never associated partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And as a quick benefit, we see from this the great importance of Tawheed, and how shirk is something so serious that the companions, they had a great reverence for the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that they see those who have never associated partners with Allah, those who born in Islam, they should have been, or they were deserving of being judged among these individuals. And then the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he came and he said about these individuals, هم الذين لا يسترقون ولا يتطيرون ولا يكتوون وعلى ربهم يتوكلون. That these individuals, they are those who do not seek ruqya, they do not seek cure from anyone, meaning they do not ask anyone to read upon them. They do not seek ruqya, recite cure by recitation, asking someone to read upon them. And they do not believe in evil omens. They do not do tatayyur, believe in evil omens and look at things that is happening around them and say that this is bad luck, I should not do such and such. And they do not use burning to cure themselves or prevent a disease, and they put their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We ask the brothers, please, closing inshallah ta'ala. There are many brothers coming in, closing the gaps as much as possible. Please avoid praying by the entrance. Jazakumullahu khairan. We see from this great hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he mentioned that in the midst of the chaos on the day of judgment and the panic and the fear, that there are going to be a group of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will select, and He will enter them into the Jannah without any punishment and without any reckoning from Him. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he mentioned the description of this group of people. And this description is from the description of the people of Iman that we have been mentioning. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He mentioned the description of those who have complete Iman, amongst that description is وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned in Surah Anfal and other places of the Quran, that the description of those, the people of Iman, who have true and complete Iman in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that they rely, they have tawakkul, reliance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and none other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the very description of these individuals who will enter the Jannah without being punished and reckoned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this shows that having tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a fruit of complete Iman and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that you cannot gain unless all of the aspects of Iman are complete. And know that every description that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam he mentioned it goes back to at-tawakkul, having reliance in Allah. Those who do not seek ruqya, they do not go to others to read upon them. That is because they have reliance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for them to seek that ruqya directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they do have bad omens. They do not go out of the door, for example, and they see a black cat or a black dog or a black crow passing, and they say that this is a sign that I should not go to work or I should stay home or something bad is going to happen to them. And they do not burn themselves in order to prevent a disease. Rather, they have true tawakkul and reliance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we would like to mention some of the qualities or some of the traits and some of the effects and the outcome of having tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is a topic that is very wide. And know that tawakkul is from the actions of the heart. You cannot look at someone and say they have tawakkul or they do not have tawakkul. Tawakkul is from the actions of the heart. And its effects, yes, is seen upon the limbs, but the reality of it is in the hearts of the believers. From the effects or the reality of having tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is having tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reliance in Allah for your risk, for your prior provision. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. That whosoever have tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is sufficient for them. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, وَلَوْ أَنَّكُمْ تَتَوَكَّلُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ حَقَّ تَوَكُّلِهِ لَرَزَقَكُمْ كَمَا يَرْزُقُ الطَّيْرُ تَغْدُو خِمَاصًا وَتَرُوحُ بِطَانًا. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, if you are to have true tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would provide for you as He provides for the birds. They leave in the morning empty belly, and they return in the evening with their belly filled and being provided for. And this hadith summarizes the concept of tawakkul. And that is, you make effort for whatever you want from this dunya, but your reliance is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know that all of the means that you are seeking is just means to get something from this dunya. But the only one who can cause you to get it, the only one who can give you that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ رِزْقُهَا. There is no creature on this earth except that upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is His provision. Having true tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to provide for us. And we know that we will not gain anything more than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for us. And we will not go and seek this dunya in the disobedience of Allah or on the contradiction of our deen. As the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, أيها الناس اتقوا الله وأجملوا في الطلب فإن نفسا لن تموت حتى تستوفي رزقه وإن أبطأ عنها فاتقوا الله وأجملوا في الطلب خذوا ما حل ودعوا ما حرم. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said, and ponder upon this hadith, O mankind, have taqwa of Allah, be dutiful to Allah, fulfill your obligations to Him, and stay away from the prohibitions. وَأَجْمِلُوا فِي الطَّلَبِ, and take it easy and be good in the seeking of your rizq. When you are seeking your provision and working for your dunya, take it easy and be good in doing so, meaning seek it from what is halal. For verily there is no soul that is going to die except until he gets what is written down for him. And then he said, fear Allah and take it easy in seeking your rizq. Take from that which is halal and stay away from that which is haram. Those who do not have reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will think by missing the Jum'ah, they are going to gain extra sustenance. They will think by robbing someone and exploiting another and cheating, they are going to gain rizq and extra sustenance. And that is because of their lack in tawakkul, having reliance in Allah. If they were to know that they are not going to get anything more than what is written down for them, and if they were to know that they are not going to die until they get everything that has been decreed and written for them, then they will not leave off their deen. They will not leave off their obligation to Allah. They will not try to push in as much work that they can before coming to the Jumu'ah and then catch the last rak'ah or the salam or just the salah, because they have reliance in Allah. And they know that they will not be given anything more than what is written for them, and they will not be given less than what is written for them. And as we said, this topic is very large, and there are many details in gaining, and this is something we should pay attention to, and we should study and increase our knowledge to build our tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we will end with two other points. The first is tawakkul, reliance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala regarding our protection. And that is from the trait of tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Hud alayhi salam, he challenged his people and he said, Kiduni jami'a thumma la tunzirun. Plot against me, all of you, and don't give me any respite. Try to harm me. And then he said, Inni tawakkaltu ala Allah, Rabbi wa Rabbikum. ما من دابة إلا هو آخذ بناصيتها. Hud alayhi salam, he said, verily I put my trust in Allah. I have tawakkul in Allah, who is my Lord and your Lord. There is no creature except that its forehead is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by knowing that every creature, every human being is under the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one can harm you except by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he told us that know that if the ummah was to gather together to harm you with something, they will not be able to harm you except with something Allah has already written against you. And note also that those who fear us with regards to these things, and especially with regards to our sustenance, that they are not on the side of the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We find many individuals, they scare mankind regarding their sustenance and saying that you will be poor and you will go through poverty. And many times, unfortunately, parents and teachers, they use these techniques for their children. You have to study, or you're going to suffer, you're going to be poor. You have to do good in your exam, or you're going to be poor, not realizing that in the entire Quran, the only one who threatened mankind with poverty is shaitan. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ash-shaytanu ya'idukumul faqr. Shaitan, he promises you and he threatens you with poverty. But throughout the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he calls us to our worship, and he will protect us and he will provide for us. And the last point is, how should we increase in tawakkul? What can we do to increase our tawakkul? You're always panicking over your risk. You're always panicking over your protection. You lock your door, you chain your door, and you're still panicking that someone may break in upon you. You lock your car and you can't be at rest. How can we increase in tawakkul? And the number one means is through the Quran. By studying the Quran and reflecting over the Quran, especially the verses and the ahadith that dealt with the attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Study the names and the attribute of Allah. And the more you know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more you will have a practical trust and reliance in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you have to be conscious of that. And the only way to gain trust and reliance in Allah is by knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. It is only the scholars, those who have knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that have true khashya in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid us and to forgive us and to educate us regarding our deen, and to teach us that which will benefit us and keep us steadfast in this dunya. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the good of this world and the good of the hereafter, and to protect us from the fire of Jahannam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid us and all of the believers around the world, and the weak believers and those who have been oppressed. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make their struggles for them as rewards for them in the hereafter, and to increase their reward in the hereafter for their struggles, and to reward them with their patience. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to humiliate those who are plotting against this deen and against its people. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to destroy them in this dunya before the hereafter. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا آمنا فاغفر لنا وارحمنا وأنت خير الراحمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اغفر لنا ولوالدينا وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وسلم وأقيموا الصلاة.